Develop the habits. You've got the brain power, you've got the energy, but develop the habits of success.
They say the chains of habit are too light to be felt until they're too heavy to be broken.
Generally speaking, investing in yourself is the best thing you can do. Anything that improves your own talents. So nobody can take it away from you. They can run up huge deficits and the dollar can become worth far less. You can have all kinds of things happen. But if you've got talent yourself and you've maximized your talent, you've got a terrific asset. And so that doesn't mean everybody should go to college, but it does mean that any way you find to improve, communication skills are enormously important. I mean, I took a Dale Carnegie course that I paid $100 for, and it was worth a college degree. At least I thought it was. Maybe this interview will convince people otherwise.
You'll learn enough to do well. You've all got the IQ to do well. You've all got the initiative and energy to do well, or you wouldn't be here. And most of you will succeed in meeting your aspirations. But in determining whether you succeed, there's more to it than intellect and energy, and I'd like to talk for just a second about that. Think about it. Think, what can I do that you can't do? Now, I get to work in a job that I love, but I've always worked in a job I love. I loved it when I loved it just as much when it was a big deal if I made $1,000. And I urge you to work in jobs you love. The question is about my business mistakes. How much time do you have? You talk about learning from mistakes. I really believe it's better to learn from other people's mistakes as much as possible. But we don't spend any time looking back at Berkshire. I've got a partner, Charlie Munger. We've been pals for 40 years. We've never had an argument. We disagree on things a lot, but we don't have arguments about it, and we never look back. We just figure there's so much to look forward to that there's just no sense thinking about what we might have. It just doesn't make any difference. I mean, you can only live life forward.
A $1,000 investment with Warren Buffett 50 years ago would give you over a $25 million return today.
He's the world's most successful moneymaker, and he made it all by simply investing in the right companies.
Some people are better at certain things than others. You know, there's a lot of people who can sing a lot better than I can. So I want a simple business, easy to understand, great economics now, honest and able management. And then I can see about, in a general way, where they're going to be 10 years from now. And if I can't see where they're going to be 10 years from now, I don't want to buy it. Basically, I don't want to buy any stock where if they close the New York Stock Exchange tomorrow for 5 years, I won't be happy owning it. I buy a farm, and I don't get a quote on it for 5 years, and I'm happy if the farm does okay. You know, I buy an apartment house, don't get a quote on it for 5 years, I'm happy if the apartment house produces the returns that I expect. But people buy a stock and they look at the price the next morning and they decide whether they're doing well or not doing well. It's crazy because they're buying a piece of a business. That's what Graham, the most fundamental part of what he taught me. You know, you're not buying a stock. You're buying a part ownership in a business. You will do well if the business does well, and if you didn't pay a totally silly price. And that's what it's all about. And you ought to buy businesses you understand. Just like if you're buying farms, you ought to buy farms you understand. It's not complicated.
You break one of the cardinal rules of investment, diversification. I mean, everybody's told, don't put all your eggs in one basket, spread them as widely as possible. You actually do sometimes, and put enormous numbers of eggs in one basket, don't you?
I stick with what I know. If somebody owns 50 stocks, can they really like the one they rank as number 50 as well as the one they rank as number 1? Can they know it as well? I don't think so.
And knowing what you do understand and don't understand. And that is the key. It's defining what I call your circle of competence. And everybody's got a different circle of competence. The important thing is not how big the circle is. The important thing is staying inside the circle. And if that circle has only got 30 companies in it out of thousands on the big board, as long as you know which 30 they are, you're okay. The best way to think about investments is to be in a room with no one else and just think. And if that doesn't work, nothing else is going to work. And the disadvantage of being in any kind of a market type environment on Wall Street would be the extreme is that you get overstimulated. You think you have to do something every day. if you buy a piece of American industry and you get a cross-section, you're going to do well over 10 or 20 or 30 years. But you're not going to do it if you try and dance in and out every day. The Dow Jones average started the 20th century at 66. It ended at 11,400. You'd say, how could you lose money during a period like that? A lot of people did because they tried to dance in and out. So what you're looking for is some way to get one good idea a year, and then ride it to its full potential. And that's very hard to do in an environment where people are shouting prices back and forth every 5 minutes and shoving reports under your nose and all that. Because Wall Street makes its money on activity. You make your money on inactivity.
You don't need a lot of brains in this business. I mean, I've always said if you got an IQ of 160, give away 30 points to somebody else because you don't need it in investments. What you do need is emotional stability. You have to be able to think independently, and you have to be when you come to a conclusion, you have to really not care what other people say and just follow the facts and follow your reasoning. And that's tough for a lot of people.
The question is large caps versus small caps. I don't know the answer to that. We don't think we don't care whether companies large cap, giant cap, middle cap, small cap, micro cap. It doesn't make any difference. I mean, the only question to us is, can we understand the business? Do we like the people running it? And does it sell for a price that is attractive? The wonderful business, you can figure out what will happen. You can't figure out when it will happen. You don't want to focus too much on when. You want to focus on what. If you're right about what, you don't have to worry about when very much.
When you look at the future, there's also the argument made that this is something that goes with your philosophy today. Get out of cash and get into assets, because we don't know what's going to happen to the dollar.
Well, cash is always a bad investment. I mean, when people said cash is king a year ago, I mean, that's crazy. I mean, cash wasn't producing anything, and it was sure to go down in value over time. On the other hand, you always want to be sure you have enough. I mean, it's like oxygen. You want to be sure it's around, but you don't need to have excessive amounts of it around. And no, I'd much rather own a good business than have cash.
And it is a hedge against the dollar?
Well, you can say all assets are a hedge against the dollar. I mean, but all you know is that the dollar is going to be worth less 10, 20, 30 years from now. I say worth less, not worthless. Right. You want to watch that. But it will be, and that's true of almost every currency that I can think of. The question is how much it depreciates in value. But so I would like to be lucky again, and if I'm lucky, then the way to do it is to play out that game and do something you enjoy, all your life, and be associated with people you like. I only work with people I like. I don't. If I could make $100 million by buying a business with some guy that caused my stomach to churn, I'd say no, because I say that's just like marrying for money, which probably isn't a very good idea in any circumstances. But if you're already rich, it's crazy, right? So I am not going to marry for money.